Welcome to Lyra Echo Stories, where every story echoes emotions, memories, and hidden truths. Step in and feel the echo of every tale.
The app icon was a little white eye inside a blue circle. I downloaded it 8 months ago after someone stole a package off my porch, a set of articulation flashcards. $12. Not even worth the annoyance. But I installed 3 cameras anyway, because that's what I do. I identify a problem before it becomes a pattern, and I build a system around it. Front porch, back door, living room, 3 little white eyes watching my house in Brookside while I was at work, while I was asleep, while I was 2 states away at a speech pathology conference in Denver, sitting in the 3rd row of Ballroom C, half listening to a panel on pediatric dysphagia protocols. That's where I was when my phone buzzed under the table. Motion alert. Camera 2. Camera 2 faces my living room. I don't get motion alerts from camera 2. Camera 1 catches the porch delivery drivers, neighborhood cats, the raccoon who figured out the recycling bin. Camera 3 covers the back door, but camera 2 is inside. Nothing triggers camera 2 unless someone is standing in the middle of my house. I opened the app under the table, the way you check a text you don't want the person next to you to see. The thumbnail was small. A figure in my living room, slightly blurred by motion. Blonde hair, carrying a box. I tapped it, and I watched my sister set the box down on my coffee table, pull out her phone, and dial someone while standing on the rug. I found at the estate sale on 43rd Street, the one I carried to my car alone because nobody was with me, and it was raining, and I didn't care because it was the exact shade of green I'd been looking for. She stood on that rug in shoes I didn't recognize and said into the phone, laughing casual, comfortable, the specific frequency of someone who has already decided the outcome. Dad's lawyer is putting it in my name. She'll never get us out. She laughed again. The person on the other end said something I couldn't hear, and Chloe tilted her head back the way she does when she thinks something is genuinely funny. Not nervous, not guilty, entertained. I watched the clip once. Then I watched it again. Then a 3rd time, not because I didn't understand what I was seeing, but because I wanted the timestamp exact. 2:17 p.m. Mountain Time, March 12th. I noted it the way I'd note a session observation at the clinic. Date, time, presenting behavior, context. I closed the app. The panel was still going. A woman 2 seats over was taking notes on vocal fold paralysis interventions. The projector hummed. Somewhere behind me, someone unwrapped a cough drop. Normal sounds in a normal room where nothing had changed for anyone except me. I should probably tell you about the house, because you'll need to understand what she was standing in. I bought it at 26. A 3-bedroom craftsman bungalow in Brookside, hardwood floors under carpet, original built-ins, a garden plot in the back that was all weeds when I closed. No cosigner, no family money, no help from anyone whose last name matched mine. I refinished the floors on my hands and knees over a long weekend in November. I rewired the porch lamp myself after watching 4 hours of YouTube tutorials. I built the bookshelf in the living room, out of reclaimed wood from a demolished barn in Olathe, and it took me 3 tries to get it level. And it still leans a 1/4 inch to the left, and I don't care, because I built it. The guest room I decorated first. Before I bought my own bed frame, before I hung curtains in my own bedroom, I bought the guest room pillows because they were the kind my mother liked, firm, cotton, no polyester fill. I found a reading lamp for my father, the warm light kind he always complained hotels never had, and the porch swing. My mother mentioned it once at Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I always wanted a porch swing, but your father says they're pointless. I drove to 4 stores in one weekend to find the right one. White oak. Slatted seat. Chains that didn't squeak. I hung it myself. I think about that sometimes, the fact that I built a room for people who were, at that exact moment, building a plan to take the house that room was in. But I didn't know that yet. Not on the day I hung the swing, and not on the morning I left for Denver, when I loaded my car and locked the door and waved to Pam Jeffries across the street. Pam is 67. Retired postal worker. Been in her house since before the neighborhood got trendy. She waved back from her porch with a coffee mug that said, "World's okay's grandma. You need someone to water your plants? They're succulents. They'll survive. Like you," Pam said. and went back inside. I listened to my mother's voicemail on the drive to KCI. She'd called that morning early, before I was up. Sweet, warm. The voice she uses when she wants you to feel held. Have a safe flight, honey. Call me when you land. We're so proud of you. I saved the message. I remember smiling. That voicemail was sent at 6:42 a.m. on March 11th. My flight left at 10:15. Chloe's first load of boxes arrived at my house at 4:30 that same afternoon, 6 hours after I was airborne. I know this because Pam took a photograph of the U-Haul in my driveway at 4:33, license plate visible. Because Pam is the kind of person who pays attention to things that don't add up. My mother called me to confirm I was leaving. Then, she sent my sister to move in, which was interesting. A colleague at the clinic had said something to me the week before I left, one of those throwaway lines people say when they're not trying to be profound. We were cleaning up after a group session, putting away picture cards, and she said, "You know who actually cares about you? The people who show up without being built a reason to." I didn't think about it then. I was too busy packing for the conference, checking my camera batteries, making sure the guest room sheets were fresh, in case my parents wanted to visit while I was gone. I should have listened. But, listening to what people hide that came later, I sat through the rest of the panel. I want you to understand that because it matters. I didn't leave the room. I didn't excuse myself to the bathroom. I didn't close my laptop and stare into space while dramatic music played in my head. I sat in my chair in Ballroom C with my lanyard around my neck. One of those lanyards that makes everyone equally unimportant. And I listened to a woman from Johns Hopkins explain aspiration risk protocols for 35 more minutes. I even wrote a note, something about thickened liquids and esophageal motility. I don't remember what it said, but I wrote it because my hand needed something to do that wasn't shaking. That's not strength. I need you to understand that too. It's not bravery, and it's not ice water, and it's not whatever people say when they watch someone hold still during an earthquake. It's the thing that happens when your body figures out what's going on before your brain gives permission to react. My chest was tight. My jaw was locked. My fingers had gone cold in the air-conditioned ballroom, the kind of cold that comes from the inside, the kind that means your blood has decided there are more important places to be than your hands. But I didn't move. Because moving meant choosing what to do, and I wasn't ready to choose yet. I was still in the assessment phase. In my field, we don't react to the first data point. We observe, we document, we look for the pattern, then we build an intervention. The intervention comes last, and it's the smallest part. The observation is everything. So I observed. When the panel ended, I walked to the hallway, found a window alcove near the elevators where nobody was standing, and sat down on the sill with my phone. I opened the camera app and played the recording one more time, not for content. I already had the content memorized, but for logistics. I needed to know exactly what I had. I had a 15-second video clip with audio. Chloe's face visible. Her voice clear. The sentence unambiguous. Time-stamped by the camera system. March 12th, 3:17 p.m. Central Time. My living room, identifiable by the bookshelf I built, and the rug I carried through the rain. I saved the clip to my phone's local storage. Then I uploaded it to my cloud drive. Then I emailed it to my self-subject line. March 12 camera 2 with no body text. 3 copies in 3 locations. I screenshotted the motion alert notification with the timestamp. I screenshotted the camera's activity log, showing no prior motion that day until 3:09 p.m. when the front door opened. 8 minutes. That's how long it took from the front door opening to Chloe saying the sentence that would end everything. 8 minutes of walking in, setting down a box, pulling out her phone, and treating my house like a problem she'd already solved. Then I called Gil Navarro. Gil is my real estate attorney. I hired him 2 years ago when the title company flagged a lien question during my refinance, something about the previous owner's contractor dispute that got tangled in the chain of title. Gil untangled it in 11 days. He charges $320 an hour. He never uses 2 words when one works, and he once told me that the most dangerous clients are the ones who bring receipts. I liked him immediately. He picked up on the second ring. Gil, it's Rachel Whitmore. Rachel, how's Denver? I need to play you something. It's a camera recording from my house. 15 seconds. He didn't ask why. That's another thing I like about Gil. He understands that context will arrive when it's ready. I held the phone to the speaker and played the clip. Chloe's voice filled the alcove, tinny and bright against the convention center carpet. Dad's lawyer is putting it in my name. She'll never get us out. Then silence. I counted. I always count, not because I'm trying to be dramatic, but because silence has a diagnostic value. The length of a pause tells you what the brain is doing behind it. A 2-second pause means processing. A 5-second pause means recalculating. Anything over 10 means the person has landed on something they're choosing words for very carefully. Gil's pause lasted 11 seconds. "This is criminal," he said. "Not civil. Criminal." I didn't respond. I wanted the next sentence. Forgery of a real property instrument is a Class C felony in Missouri. If someone filed a fraudulent deed and that's what this sounds like, we're looking at forgery, filing false documents, and depending on how many people were involved, conspiracy. He paused again. Shorter this time, 3 seconds. "How much time do you want to give them before we file?" "None." "Good. Get back to Kansas City. Bring the recording. Don't call them. Don't text them. Don't go to the house first, come to my office." "And Rachel?" "Yes. Don't delete anything off that camera. Not the clip, not the activity log, not the motion alerts. If there's more footage her arriving, other people helping, anything, save all of it. The system is cloud-based?" "Yes." "Then it's time-stamped and server verified. They can't claim you fabricated it." Another pause. 2 seconds. "This is a good case. This is a very good case." I hung up, opened my airline app. My return flight was scheduled for Saturday, 4 days away. I changed it to tomorrow morning, 6:15 a.m., direct to KCI. The change fee was $87. I paid it the way you pay for something that's already saved you more than it cost. I went back to my hotel room, laid my clothes out for the morning, plugged in my phone, set my alarm for 4:30. I brushed my teeth, and I looked in the mirror, and the person looking back at me was exactly the same person who had looked at me that morning before the panel. Same face, same hair, same posture. Nothing had changed on the outside, but something behind my eyes was different. And I knew what it was, because I'd seen it in the parents of my patients, the ones who walked into an evaluation suspecting something and walked out knowing it. It's the look of someone who has stopped hoping for a different answer and started planning for the one they got. I turned off the light, set my bag by the door. Tomorrow I would go home, but not to confront anyone, not to cry, not to ask my mother why. To collect. I didn't go home first. I landed at KCI at 8:42 a.m., walked past baggage claim with only my carry-on, got into my car in the long-term lot, and drove straight to Gil Navarro's office on the second floor of a converted brick building on Grand Boulevard. I'd texted him from the gate in Denver, landing 8:42. Office by 9:15. He'd replied with one word, "Ready." Gil's office smells like old paper and cold coffee. There's a framed photo of his daughter on the credenza and a stack of closing files on every flat surface. He doesn't have a receptionist. He buzzes you in himself, which tells you everything about how he runs things lean. No buffer, no delay between you and the answer. I sat down across from his desk and handed him my phone with the recording queued up. He watched it on a screen this time, not just audio. Chloe's face, Chloe's laugh, Chloe's posture on my couch. Then he pulled up the Jackson County Recorder's Office website and typed my address. "There it is," he said, turning the screen toward me. "A quitclaim deed filed 6 days ago. Grantor: Rachel Ann Whitmore. Grantee: Chloe Marie Whitmore. Notarized by Dale R. Crenshaw, attorney at law. Kevin D. Whitmore listed as witness." I looked at the signature line. The loops were wrong. My R doesn't have a tail, it never has. Not since I was 12 and decided tails were inefficient. This R had a tail that curled like a cursive textbook example. Whoever forged it didn't know me well enough to copy my handwriting, which told me everything I needed to know about how much attention my family had been paying for the last 29 years. "That's not my signature," I said. "I know," Gil said, "and that's why this isn't a family argument. This is forgery. Class C felony under Missouri Revised Statutes Section 570.09. Filing it with the county recorder is a separate offense. And if your father and his friend coordinated this together, that's conspiracy." He closed the laptop. "Do you know Dale Crenshaw?" He's my father's college friend, Mizu. Semi-retired. They play poker once a month. Gil wrote the name down. We'll need your original deed. You have it? Fireproof safe. In my bedroom closet, which is currently occupied by your sister. The guest room is occupied by my sister. My bedroom is still mine. I paused. For now, Gil leaned back. Here's what I recommend. Go home. Act normal. Don't let them know you've seen the recording or the filing. Get the deed out of the safe. Bring it to me. We compare the authentic signature with the forgery, and we have the centerpiece of a criminal referral. He looked at me. Can you do that? Go in there and pretend you don't know? Gil, I'm a speech-language pathologist. I've sat through 3-hour IEP meetings with parents who lied about their child's home environment while I had the clinical data in a folder on my lap. I can do normal. He almost smiled. Almost. I drove to my house at 10:15. Chloe's white Civic was in the driveway, parked at an angle, the way she parks everything. Like precision is something that happens to other people. There were curtains in the front window that I didn't buy. Floral. Sheer. The kind that look like they came from a clearance bin at Home Goods, which they probably did, because Chloe has never paid full price for anything in her life, including the house she was currently sitting in. I parked on the street, walked up my own front steps, with my conference bag over my shoulder, like I was coming home from a normal trip. Unlocked the door with my own key, which still worked, which meant they hadn't changed the locks yet, which meant they were either confident I wouldn't find out or too disorganized to think that far ahead. Both options were insulting. Chloe was on the couch. My couch. She looked up from her phone the way you look up when a waiter refills your water, acknowledging the presence, not the person. Oh, you're back early, she smiled. Casual. The same smile from the recording. Conference ended a day ahead. Figured I'd skip the last panel. I set my bag down, looked around. New throw pillows on the couch. A blanket I didn't recognize draped over the arm of the chair my grandmother left me. A candle on the side table, vanilla and bergamot. The smell of someone making herself at home, in a home that wasn't hers. Mom's in the kitchen, Chloe said, turning back to her phone. Of course she was. Stephanie Whitmore was standing at my kitchen island, unloading groceries into my refrigerator. She turned when I walked in, and her face did something that I've seen in 100 parent conferences, the rapid recalibration of someone adjusting their presentation to match the audience. Honey, you're home! She hugged me. I noted the duration. 2 seconds. Standard is 3 to 4 for a mother who hasn't seen her daughter in a week. 2 seconds is the length of a hug where the arms are doing what's expected, but the body is already thinking about the next task. I thought I'd help Chloe get settled while you were away, she said, reaching for a can of soup. My cabinet. My shelf. She's between apartments again, and I knew you wouldn't mind. I looked past her shoulder. Down the hall. The guest room door was open. I walked to it. Chloe's clothes in the closet. Chloe's throw pillows on the bed, replacing the firm cotton ones I'd bought for my mother. My father's reading lamp was unplugged on the floor, cord coiled next to the baseboards like something discarded. The duvet I'd chosen, slate blue. Simple. The kind my mother once said made her feel like she was in a nice hotel, was folded and stacked on the shelf above, replaced by a quilt I'd never seen. I stood in the doorway for 4 seconds, counted them. Then I walked to my bedroom, opened the closet, opened the fireproof safe combination lock. 4 digits, the year I graduated college. Inside, birth certificate, passport, the original deed to 4738 Oak Street, signed by me, notarized by a real notary, witnessed by the title company. I took the deed, put it in my bag, closed the safe, closed the closet. I walked back to the kitchen. My mother was arranging fruit in a bowl I'd bought at a farmer's market on Troost Avenue the first weekend I moved in. She looked comfortable. She looked like she belonged here, which was the whole point, I realized. She'd always believed she did. You don't mind if Chloe stays a few days, do you? Stephanie said. Just until she finds something. You know how it is. Of course not, I said, which was the last lie I ever told my mother. Have you ever pulled into your own driveway and felt like you were trespassing? I crossed the street and knocked on Pam's door. She opened it holding a pair of binoculars and a glass of iced tea, which was either a coincidence or a lifestyle. Honey, she said, that girl moved a beanbag chair into your house. You want me to get the hose? Not yet. I sat down on her porch step. Can you tell me exactly what you saw the day they moved in? Pam set the binoculars down, picked up her phone, scrolled, turned it to face me. 14 photographs. Time-stamped. The U-Haul in my driveway. The license plate. Stephanie directing 2 men carrying a mattress through my front door. Chloe standing on my porch with a smoothie, watching. I knew something wasn't right, Pam said. You don't move furniture into somebody's house while they're on a plane unless you don't want them to see it happen. I looked at the photos. Then I looked at Pam, 67 years old, retired postal worker, standing on her own porch with her own iced tea, watching the street because that's what she does. Not because she was asked to. Because she pays attention. Because she cares. Because some people don't need you to build them a guest room before they decide you're worth looking after. Pam, I said, can you send me those photos? Already sent. Check your messages. I checked. 14 images. Time-stamped and geotagged. I forwarded all of them to Gil before I stood up. The case was building itself. All I had to do was let it. Gil placed the 2 documents side by side on his desk, like an optometrist asking you to choose between lenses. On the left, my deed. The real one. Recorded 3 years ago when I closed on the house. Notarized by the title company. Stamped and filed and clean. My signature at the bottom small, tight. The R without a tail. The W slightly wider than it needs to be, because I've always pressed harder on first letters. On the right, the forgery. Same property description, same address, same legal language, but the signature was someone else's idea of me. The R had a theatrical curl. The W was narrow and tentative, and the notarization at the bottom read, Notarized by Dale R. Crenshaw, Attorney at Law, Witness, Janet Morris. Janet Morris, Gil said. Does that name mean anything to you? No. It doesn't mean anything to anyone. We ran it through the Missouri Secretary of State database, the voter rolls, the professional licensing boards. There is no Janet Morris at the address listed on this notarization. The witness signature appears to be fabricated. He said it the way he says everything, flat, precise, one fact at a time, like stacking bricks. I appreciated that. Some people need their bad news wrapped in empathy. I needed mine in evidence. So a forged grantor signature, a fabricated witness, and a licensed attorney who notarized both, I said. That's 3 felony counts before we get to conspiracy? Gil leaned forward. Tell me about Dale Crenshaw. Semi-retired. Handles a few closings a year, maybe some estate work. He and my father have been friends since Mizzou 35 years. Maybe longer. They play poker the second Tuesday of every month. He was at my parents' house for Christmas 2 years ago. I made him a plate. Gil wrote something down. I watched him write, and I thought about that plate turkey, cranberry sauce, the rolls I'd made from scratch because my mother said store-bought rolls embarrassed her. I carried it across the living room and handed it to Dale Crenshaw, and he said, "Thank you, sweetheart," and went back to talking to my father about Kansas City football. I don't remember if he looked at me. I remember the plate. That's when it hit. Not the anger, the memory. I was 14. It was October. I was sitting at the kitchen table doing algebra homework while my mother stood at the counter, phone pressed between her ear and shoulder, peeling carrots for dinner. She was talking to Aunt Linda I knew because she only used that particular voice with Linda, the conspiratorial sister voice, half gossip and half diagnosis. She didn't know I could hear her. Or maybe she did and it didn't matter, because what she said wasn't cruel, it was assessment. The same way you describe the weather or sort laundry. Just facts, as she understood them. Chloe's the one with spark, she said. Dance recital was adorable. She's got that thing, you know? People look at her. She peeled a carrot in one long strip. Rachel's the practical one. She'll manage on her own. She said it the way you describe a household appliance. Reliable, low maintenance, doesn't need attention. I didn't cry. I closed my textbook, opened it again, finished the problem set, got a 98 on the exam. And I started managing. I managed my way through high school, managed a scholarship, managed a master's degree, and a clinical fellowship, and a career, and a savings account, and a house, a real house, with a deed and a foundation and a porch swing. I hung for a woman who described me the way you'd describe a toaster that still works. I built everything I have because of that sentence. And I was sitting in Gil Navarro's office at 31 years past it, still building, still managing, still proving to a woman who had already filed her assessment, and moved on. The worst part, the part I need to say because it matters, is that even then, even with the forged deed on the desk, and the fabricated witness, and the recordings, and the photographs, part of me was still looking for the exit, the version of this where it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe Mom didn't know how far Dale would take it. Maybe the quitclaim was exploratory, just paperwork, like transferring a car title. Maybe Chloe exaggerated on the phone. Maybe I was overreacting because I'm the practical one, and practical people process emotion through systems. And I was just building a system around a feeling that would pass. I caught myself doing it. I recognized the pattern the way I'd recognize it. In a patient, the regression to baseline, the reframing of hostile input as neutral, the desperate search for a reading of the data that doesn't require you to change your entire operating model. I was diagnosing myself, and the diagnosis was clear. I was still living inside the lie, still believing that if I managed hard enough they'd see me, still interpreting their behavior through the filter of a 14-year-old girl who thought the problem was that she hadn't done enough yet. I picked up my phone, I called my father, kept it casual. The way you check a pressure point light touch, watch for flinch. Hey, Dad, I got back early from Denver. Noticed some mail at the house from a law office. Everything okay? Kevin Whitmore's voice is a map of everything he's trying not to say. He's been that way my whole life. A man who communicates in gaps, in the spaces between words, in the subjects he changes, and the eye contact he avoids. I've spent my career learning to read what people leave out. My father was my first case study. Oh, that's probably just your mother was looking into some estate planning. You know, getting things organized. Nothing to worry about. Estate planning? I repeated. For whose estate? Silence. I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 seconds. In my field, that's diagnostic. A 7-second pause after a direct question means the person has recognized they're in a situation they didn't prepare for, and they're scanning for an answer that's both responsive and evasive. It's the verbal equivalent of watching someone look for an exit in a room with one door. Rachel, it's not what you... Okay, Dad. I kept my voice even. Clinical. The same tone I use when a child is struggling, and I need them to feel safe enough to try again. I trust you. He exhaled. Relief. A man who had just been let off a hook he didn't realize he was on. I hung up. Then I opened my voicemail. Found my mother's message from March 11th. The one she'd left the morning I flew to Denver. Have a safe flight, honey. We're so proud of you. I played it one more time. Listen to the warmth. The practiced softness. The performance of a woman who was calling her daughter to confirm a departure time so she could start a clock. I deleted it. Not dramatically. Not with trembling hands or a moment of hesitation. I tapped the voicemail. I tapped delete. I tapped confirm. 3 taps. The way you clear a notification that no longer applies. Then I called Gil. The witness is fabricated. The signature is forged. And my father just lied to me on the phone, I said. What's next? Next, Gil said. We pull the notarization records for Dale Crenshaw's last 5 years of filings. If he's done this before, your parents aren't his only clients. And if they're not his only clients, the DA is going to be very interested in this case. I hung up. Sat in my car. Put both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, the way my father taught me when I was 16, the one useful thing he ever gave me, and I thought, 7 seconds, Dad. That's all it took. I drove past the house that evening. I didn't plan to. I was heading back from Gil's office, and the route goes through Brookside, and my hands turned the wheel before my brain caught up, which is the kind of thing that happens when your body knows something your mind is still negotiating with. It was dusk. That particular hour in early March, when the sky can't decide whether it's evening or just giving up on the afternoon. The streetlights were on, but the sun wasn't fully gone, so everything had 2 shadows, one from the light above and one from the light behind. My house looked the way it always looks from the street. White siding, green shutters. The porch I repainted last September, but the porch light was on. I always leave the porch light on when I'm expecting someone. Chloe had left it on out of habit. Not her habit, mine. She'd absorbed the gesture the way people absorb furniture. You live in someone else's space long enough, and their patterns start to feel like yours. Through the living room window, I could see her. Feet up on the couch, television on. A plate on the coffee table, my coffee table. The one I stripped and restained the week I closed on the house because it had water rings from the previous owner, and I couldn't live with someone else's damage. She was eating something. Comfortable. Settled. The posture of a person who believes she belongs exactly where she is. I turned off the engine, sat in the dark, and I thought about the guest room. Not the guest room as it is now, Chloe's throw pillows, Chloe's clothes, my father's lamp unplugged on the floor. I thought about the guest room as I built it. 3 years ago, the first room I finished, I want that to land. Because it's the part that matters. I moved into that house with a mattress on the floor of the master bedroom, a folding chair in the kitchen, and a coffee maker I'd had since grad school. I didn't have a couch for 3 weeks. I ate dinner on the floor for a month. But the guest room had sheets on the bed by day 2. I drove to 3 different stores to find the pillows my mother liked. Firm, cotton casing, no polyester fill. I know this because she mentioned it once, 4 years before I bought the house, during a conversation I wasn't supposed to remember. But I remembered. I always remembered. The reading lamp for my father, warm light, adjustable neck, the kind he said hotels never get right. I found it online, paid for expedited shipping, placed it on the nightstand at the angle he preferred, which I knew because I'd watched him adjust hotel lamps my entire childhood. The porch swing, Thanksgiving, 3 years ago. My mother, halfway through her second glass of wine, I always wanted a porch swing, but your father says they're pointless. She said it to no one in particular. She probably forgot she said it by dessert. I didn't forget. I spent the following weekend driving to 4 stores, comparing wood types, checking weight capacities, reading reviews from women who sounded like my mother. White oak, slatted seat. Chains that didn't squeak. I hung it myself on a Sunday afternoon while Pam watched from across the street and offered to hold the ladder. My mother sat on that swing exactly twice. Both times for less than 10 minutes. Both times while checking her phone. I built that guest room the way you build a resume for a job you desperately want. Every detail was an argument. Every pillow was a paragraph. Every lamp was a closing statement. See me. See what I've made. See that I'm not just the practical one. I'm the one who pays attention, the one who remembers, the one who builds rooms for people who never asked for them, because I thought if the room was perfect enough, maybe they'd stay. They didn't stay. They moved someone else in. And sitting in my car in the dark, watching my sister eat dinner on my couch in the house I built, to earn a love that was never coming, I finally heard it. Not my mother's voice. My own. They saw the house. They just didn't see me inside it. The lie didn't shatter. That's not how it works. It folded. Slowly, like a house of cards in a room where someone finally opened a window. One belief leaning against another, and when the first one tipped, they all went. Every justification, every excuse, every maybe she didn't mean it that way, they folded flat and quiet, and I sat there in my car and watched them go with the same clinical detachment I bring to everything. Except this time the patient was me, and the diagnosis was 15 years overdue. I picked up my phone, called Gil. File everything. He paused. Not long, 2 seconds. You're sure? Once this moves, it doesn't stop. Rachel, these are your parents. They were, I said. Now they're respondents. Gil was quiet for a moment. Then, I'll have the criminal referral to the DA's office by end of business tomorrow. Civil complaint to void the deed filed simultaneously. Bar complaint against Crenshaw goes out in the morning. All 3 at once? If we stagger them, they have time to coordinate a response. If we file simultaneously, each one learns about the others from their own lawyer, not from each other. They can't get their story straight if they don't know which story to tell. I almost smiled. Almost. At what point does loyalty to family become a door you hold open for people who are robbing you? I thought about that while I drove to the furnished apartment I'd been renting since I got back from Denver. Temporary. Beige walls. Someone else's art. A kitchen with 2 forks and a pan I hadn't used. It wasn't mine and it didn't need to be. It was a holding pattern. And I am very good at holding patterns. That's what the practical one does. But I thought about something else too. Something my colleague had said the week before Denver, while we were stacking picture cards at the end of a session. You know who actually cares about you? The people who show up without being built a reason to. Ham showed up with binoculars and photographs and an offer to get the hose. Nobody built Pam a guest room. Nobody bought Pam the right pillows. She just watched. She just noticed. She just cared freely, without a contract, without a room full of carefully chosen furniture that said, "Please love me back." My phone buzzed. Text from Stephanie. "Honey, you seemed quiet when you visited. Is everything okay?" Chloe says, "You barely stayed an hour. Call me. Love you. EXO." I read it once. I put the phone down. I did not reply. Not because I was punishing her, because I had nothing left to say to a woman who signs her texts with "love you," while signing my house away with a forged name. The filings would go out in the morning. 3 envelopes, 3 institutions, 3 points of no return. I turned off the light in the apartment that wasn't mine, and I lay down on sheets that didn't smell like anything. And I thought, tomorrow I stop managing. Tomorrow I start deciding. And for the first time in 15 years, the practical one went to sleep without building anything for anyone. The first call came at 9:14 a.m. on a Thursday. I know because I was between patients, a 6-year-old with a lateral lisp and a 4-year-old with selective mutism. And I checked my phone during the 8-minute gap I keep between sessions for notes. Stephanie Whitmore. I let it go to voicemail. The second call came at 9:16. Then 9:18, then 9:21. 4 calls in 7 minutes. That's not a mother checking in. That's a woman who has just discovered that the system she built is being disassembled, and she wants to know who is holding the wrench. I called her back at lunch, from my car in the clinic parking lot with the engine running, because I wanted to be able to hang up and drive away the moment this stopped being useful. She picked up before the first ring finished. "What did you do, Rachel?" Gone. The warm voice. The honey-toned concern. The performance of a woman who sends texts that end with ZO while filing forged deeds with the county recorder. What was left was something I'd heard before, but never directed at me, the raw operational voice underneath. Clipped. Hard. The voice she used when things weren't going the way she'd planned and somebody needed to be corrected. "I didn't do anything, Mom. I told the truth." I paused. Let the silence work. Which is interesting, because you didn't. "Dale called your father in a panic this morning." "A bar complaint? A bar complaint, Rachel? Do you understand what you've done? That man has been a friend of this family for 35 years. And he notarized a forged deed, Mom, with a fabricated witness. That's not a family favor. That's a felony. This is a family matter." Her voice climbed the way. Voices climb when the person speaking knows they've lost the argument but hasn't accepted it yet. You don't bring lawyers into family. You don't bring the state into family business. What is wrong with you? "You brought a lawyer in first, Mom. His name is Dale." Silence. 3 seconds. Then she pivoted. I could hear the gear shift, the recalibration, the same rapid adjustment I'd seen on her face in my kitchen when I came home early. She went from anger to grief in under a breath. "I'm your mother, Rachel. I carried you. I raised you. I sat in that hospital for 14 hours when you were born. I packed your lunches. I drove you to speech camp every summer. Speech camp! And this is how you repay me? By sending lawyers after your own mother?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have words. The words were there, organized, precise, ready to deploy. But silence, delivered correctly, does something that words can't. It creates a vacuum. And people who are performing will always rush to fill a vacuum, because silence is the one audience reaction they can't control. Stephanie filled it. For 43 seconds I counted, she cycled through justification, guilt, history, sacrifice, and a version of events where she was the protagonist, and I was the ungrateful daughter who couldn't see how much she'd been given. She mentioned my birth weight. She mentioned a school play she attended in 2003. She mentioned the cost of my braces. 43 seconds. Not one of those seconds contained an apology or an acknowledgement that a forged deed existed. When she paused for breath, I said, "Is there anything else?" She hung up. Chloe called 20 minutes later. Different energy, crying or performing crying, which sounds almost identical unless you've been trained to hear the difference. And I have. The real version has irregular breathing. The performed version has consistent rhythm, like someone pacing their emotion for maximum effect. Chloe's breathing was irregular, which meant either she was genuinely afraid or she was better at this than I gave her credit for. "Rach, I didn't know it was illegal. Mom said it was just paperwork like transferring a car title. She said you'd be fine with it once you understood. You were on camera, Chloe. Silence. You were standing in my living room on my rug, and you called a friend and you said, Dad's lawyer is putting it in my name. She'll never get us out. You were laughing. More silence. The irregular breathing stopped, which told me everything. I'm not going to tell you what to do, I said. But if I were you, I'd get an attorney. A different one from Dale. I hung up. Went back inside. Finished my afternoon sessions, 2 articulation evals and a fluency reassessment. I wrote my notes. I locked the clinic. I drove to the apartment that wasn't mine. My phone buzzed at a red light. Pam. Update from across the street. The blonde one just had a pizza delivered to your house. On your porch. Large pepperoni. Want me to intercept? I haven't had dinner and my morals are flexible. I typed back, eat it. Consider it a consulting fee. You're my favorite neighbor, and I'm not even saying that for the pizza. I pulled into the apartment parking lot and sat in the car for a while, not thinking. Just sitting. The engine ticking as it cooled. The streetlight buzzing above me in that frequency that always sounds like it's trying to decide whether to stay on or give up. This is the part of the story where I'm supposed to cry, where the weight of what I've lost is supposed to hit me, and I'm supposed to break down alone in a parking lot, and the music swells and you feel something for me. I didn't cry. Not because I'm strong, because the thing I lost, a mother who loved me the way I needed to be loved, I never had. You can't grieve something that didn't exist. You can only grieve the version of it you built in your head, and I'd been building that version for 15 years, and I'd already watched it fold in a parked car outside my own house the night before. What I felt instead was something I don't have a word for. It was the specific emptiness of a room that's been cleared of furniture you thought was permanent. Not sad, not angry, just spatial, like my chest had more square footage than it used to, and I hadn't decided what to put there yet. My phone rang. Gil. Late after 8. Dale flipped, he said. Full cooperation. Sworn statement. He's providing the complete timeline, who contacted him, when, what he was told, what he was paid. What was he paid? Your father gave him $2,000 and a bottle of bourbon. $2,000 and a bottle of bourbon. That's what my house was worth to my family. That's what I was worth. There's something else, Gil said. In his statement, Dale describes the initial conversation with your mother, when she first approached him about preparing the deed. What did she say? Gil paused. 1 second. He was reading. She said, Rachel's the practical one. She'll get over it. The car was quiet. The streetlight buzzed. My hands were on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, and they went still, completely still, the way hands go when the body receives information that the brain isn't ready to process, but the nervous system already has. The practical one. She'll get over it. The same sentence. 29 years apart. Once to Aunt Linda on a Tuesday in October, once to Dale Crenshaw in a request to steal my house. My mother's assessment of me had never changed. Not once. Not in 29 years. I'd built a career and a house and a life, and none of it had moved the needle, even a fraction of a degree. I was still the practical one. Still the one who would manage. Still the appliance that works. Rachel? Gil said. You there? I'm here, I said. What's next? The DA wants to meet. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bring everything. I'll be there at 9:45. I hung up. Turned off the car. Went inside. Made a cup of tea with someone else's kettle in someone else's kitchen. And I stood at the counter and held the mug with both hands, and I thought, she'll get over it. And for the first time, my mother was wrong. Not because I wouldn't recover, but because getting over it implies going back to what you were before. And I was never going back to the practical one who builds guest rooms for people who are already planning to take the house. The DA's name was Carla Ennis, mid-50s, reading glasses on a chain, a handshake that meant business. She listened to the recording once, reviewed Dale's sworn statement, and looked at me across the table the way a surgeon looks at an X-ray, not with sympathy, but with professional clarity. This is clean, she said to Gil. The forgery alone gets us there. The fabricated witness makes it emphatic, and the cooperation statement gives us the chain of command. She turned to me. Your mother initiated this? According to Dale Crenshaw's sworn testimony, yes. And your father's involvement? He provided the connection to Crenshaw. He signed as witness on the forged deed, and when I asked him about it by phone, he lied. I paused. I have the call log. 4 seconds of silence before the lie, if that's useful. Ennis almost smiled. We'll take the call log. Gil handed her the full file, everything, organized chronologically the way I'd structured it for him. The camera recording, the motion alert timestamps, Pam's 14 photographs, the voicemail analysis showing my mother confirmed my travel schedule 6 hours before the move-in, the original deed next to the forgery, signatures side by side, Dale's statement, 18 pages, detailing 14 months of coordination. 14 months, that's the number that kept finding me. Not the felony counts, not the fabricated witness, not the $2,000 and the bourbon. 14 months. Stephanie Whitmore had been planning this for over a year. She'd sat across from me at Thanksgiving dinner, my table, my turkey, my rolls from scratch, and calculated. She'd called me on my birthday and said, "I'm so proud of the woman you've become," and she'd already contacted Dale. She texted "Love you XO," and she'd already chosen the month. I thought about what Dale's statement said, the part Gil had read me over the phone the night before, but that I now saw in print for the first time. Page 6, paragraph 3. Stephanie's words to Dale when she first proposed the deed transfer. "Rachel won't fight. She never fights. She's the practical one. She'll cry about it and then move on." I read it twice. Not because I needed to understand it, but because I wanted to see the words in type. Black ink on white paper. My mother's assessment of me, preserved in a sworn legal document, permanent and undeniable. She hadn't said it with malice. She'd said it with confidence. The confidence of a woman who had studied her daughter for 29 years and concluded, with absolute certainty, that the practical one would absorb this the way she absorbed everything else, quietly, efficiently, without making a scene. She was right about most of it. I was quiet. I was efficient. I didn't make a scene. I made a case. The confrontation happened 2 weeks later at Gil's office. Neutral ground. Gil suggested it. "They'll feel safer in a conference room than a courtroom," he said. "Safer people make bigger mistakes." Stephanie arrived in what I recognized as her church outfit, navy blazer, pearl earrings, the lipstick she wears when she wants to be taken seriously by people she considers important. Kevin was behind her, slightly to the left, the position he's occupied for the entirety of their marriage. Their attorney, a man named Frank Devereaux, who'd taken their case after 2 other firms declined, walked in carrying a leather briefcase and the expression of someone who knew exactly how this was going to go. They sat across from us. Stephanie folded her hands on the table. Composed. Camera ready. She expected negotiation. She expected Rachel, the practical one, to present her grievance and then listen to a counter-proposal involving an apology, a revised arrangement, and some version of "let's keep this in the family." Gil opened a folder. He placed the first document on the table. The forged quitclaim deed. Stephanie's eyes moved to it, then back to Gil. Second document. The authentic deed. Side by side. The signatures, mine and the forgery, facing each other like 2 versions of the same person. One real and one invented. Third, Pam's photographs. 14 of them, fanned across the table. The U-Haul, the license plate. Stephanie in the driveway, directing 2 men carrying a mattress. Chloe on the porch with a smoothie, watching. All time-stamped, all geotagged. Fourth, the voicemail analysis. Stephanie's call to me at 6:42 a.m. Have a safe flight, followed by Chloe's arrival at 4:30 p.m. the same day. A timeline that drew a straight line from love to logistics. Fifth, Dale Crenshaw's sworn statement. 18 pages. Gil placed it last and let it sit there. He didn't narrate. He didn't explain. He let the paper do what paper does when it's been assembled. With precision, it speaks for itself. Stephanie stared at the table. I watched her hands. They were clasped, but the knuckles were white, and the left thumb was pressing into the right palm hard enough to leave a mark. I know this because I was trained to watch hands. Hands tell you what the face has learned to hide. Frank Devereaux leaned over, whispered something to Stephanie. She shook her head once, sharp, the gesture of a woman who is not yet ready to accept the dimensions of the room she's in. She looked at me. "You planned this," she said. Quiet. Not a question. "You planned it first," I said. 14 months, according to Dale. That man is a liar. He's a liar who kept receipts. Your check for $2,000 is on page 11. Stephanie's mouth opened, closed, opened again. The rhythm of someone whose script has been taken away and who hasn't memorized the understudy's lines. Their attorney put a hand on Kevin's arm. Kevin hadn't spoken. He sat there, slightly folded, the way he always sits when Stephanie is in control, which is always. But now Stephanie wasn't in control, and Kevin was in the unfamiliar position of being visible. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. His mouth moved the beginning of something. The shape of the word sorry, or maybe just the shape of a man who realizes he chose the wrong side of a door that's about to close. Stephanie turned to him. He stopped, mouth closed. The word, whatever it was, retreated. 4 seconds. That's how long Kevin Whitmore's conscience lasted. I counted. I always count. Stephanie turned back to me. Last attempt. The voice shifted, not warm, not angry, but something in between. The voice of a woman who is out of strategies and reaching for the only weapon she has left. You'll regret this, Rachel. When you're alone, when you have nobody, you'll wish you still had a family. I looked at her. My mother, the woman who carried me for 9 months and assessed me for 29 years, and never once revised her conclusion. I have a family, I said. You're just not in it. She didn't respond. There was nothing to respond to. The sentence wasn't an argument. It was a closing statement. Gil gathered the documents. Devereaux asked for a recess that everyone knew was a surrender. Stephanie stood up first, always first, and walked out without looking back. Kevin followed, still behind her, still slightly to the left. I walked out after them, not behind them. After. There's a difference. Gil fell into step beside me in the hallway. That went well, he said. 11 seconds, I said. What? That's how long it took you to say criminal the first time I played you that recording. 11 seconds to undo 14 months of planning. I looked at him, which I thought was worth noting. Gil nodded. The almost smile again. You're a very specific person, Rachel. I'm the practical one. It was the first time I said it without flinching. 3 months later, I changed the locks for the second time, not because I needed to. The first change, the one Gil recommended the week the charges were filed, was practical. New deadbolt, new knob set, new code on the garage keypad. The locksmith was a quiet man who didn't ask questions, which I appreciated, because I didn't have answers I wanted to give to a stranger. The second change was different. I chose the hardware myself. Brushed nickel. Solid. A lock that felt like something when you turned it, deliberate, weighted, the mechanical satisfaction of a thing designed to do exactly one job, and do it well. I installed it on a Saturday morning with a screwdriver and a cup of coffee, and Pam watching from her porch with unsolicited commentary. You're stripping that screw. I'm not stripping the screw. You're stripping the screw, and you're too stubborn to use the drill. She was right about the screw. I used the drill. The legal update, since you'll want to know, Kevin and Stephanie Whitmore were arraigned in Jackson County on 2 counts each, forgery and filing fraudulent documents. Their case is pending. The maximum sentence for a Class C felony in Missouri is up to 7 years. They won't get the maximum, but the felony charges are on record, and the forged deed has been voided by court order, and my title is restored and insured against future claims, and none of that can be undone by a phone call or a casserole or a voicemail that ends with XO. Dale Crenshaw's law license was suspended for 18 months, pending a full disciplinary review. He is not handling any more family favors. Chloe cooperated with the DA's office. She received 2 years of probation and 80 hours of community service. She sent me one text 3 weeks after the arraignment. I'm sorry, Rach. I read it. I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty. I just didn't have anything to say to her yet. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. I've learned that not deciding is also a kind of answer. The kind that gives you room to breathe, while you figure out whether the apology is a door or a window. The house is different now. The guest room is my home office. New desk oak. Simple, the kind that doesn't try to impress anyone. My diplomas on the wall. My therapy materials organized on shelves by category and age range, the way I organize everything. Because that's who I am, and I've stopped apologizing for it. The firm cotton pillows are gone. The reading lamp is gone. The duvet that made my mother feel like she was in a nice hotel is in a donation bag in the garage. I didn't throw it away. I gave it to someone who might actually use it. The porch swing is gone too. In its place, a bench. Painted green, slightly uneven, from a flea market in Waldo that Pam dragged me to on a Sunday afternoon because she said I needed to touch grass and stop thinking like a lawyer. "It's not pretty," Pam said when I picked it out. "I know. The left leg is shorter than the right. I see that. It'll hold both of us, though. That's why I'm buying it." We carried it to my porch together. Pam took the heavy end, which she didn't have to do but did anyway, because Pam Jeffries does not wait to be built a guest room before she decides you're worth showing up for. We sat on it the following Saturday. She brought pie cherry, homemade. The crust cracked on one side because Pam bakes the way she does everything else, with confidence and zero interest in aesthetics. We ate it on the uneven bench and watched the street, and didn't talk about my parents, or the case, or the forged deed, or the 14 months. We talked about her grandkids. We talked about the cardinal that kept hitting her kitchen window. We talked about whether the house 3 doors down was ever going to finish their landscaping, or if the pile of mulch was now a permanent installation. Then she said, "I watched you move into this house 3 years ago, carrying boxes alone, rain coming down sideways. I almost came over to help, but I thought you might be the type who wanted to do it yourself." I was, and now I looked at her. 67 years old. Retired. A woman who takes photographs of suspicious U-Hauls and keeps binoculars by the window and eats intercepted pizza without guilt. A woman who noticed me the day I moved in, and never stopped noticing, not because I earned it, not because I built her a room, but because that's what real attention looks like. It just looks, it doesn't invoice. "Now I'd let you carry 1 box, I said. Ham laughed. "Short, warm, the kind that starts and ends in the same breath. 1 box. Big spender, don't push it." We finished the pie. She went home. I stayed on the bench. What does family mean when the people who share your blood are the ones who tried to steal your foundation? I'd like to hear your answer. Leave it in the comments if you have one, because I know you do. I can hear it in the way you're listening right now. You've thought about this before. Maybe you're thinking about it right now. I found my answer. It took a forged deed and a criminal case, and a mother who called me the practical one for 29 years, without once considering that practical people make very thorough enemies. Later that evening, I sat on my couch, in my living room, on the rug I carried through the rain, and I opened the camera app one last time. The little white eye, 3 cameras, 3 views. Front porch, back door, living room. All clear, all quiet, all mine. I closed the app. I didn't need the little white eye anymore. The house was secure not because of the cameras or the deadbolts or the title insurance, but because every room in it was finally only entirely mine. No guest pillows waiting for guests who were never coming to visit. No porch swing for a woman who sat on it twice and planned a theft for 14 months. No reading lamp for a man whose conscience lasted 4 seconds. Just my books, my work, my uneven bench, and a neighbor across the street who waves every morning without needing a reason. The locks are changed. The cameras are off. And the only people who come through my door now are the ones who knock first.
Thank you for being part of Lyra Echo Stories. If this story stayed with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because every echo never truly fades.